Kamala Khan is Miss Marvel, a Pakistani Muslim girl growing up in America with a love of Captain Marvel. After coming across a family heirloom, she soon realizes her lineage is quite unique and special, and she has superpowers too. Naturally, she learns to use them and starts her journey to be just like her superhero idol. Miss Marvel is a fun, adventurous and pivotal entry into the ever-expanding MCU. In many ways, this show can be split into two distinct elements. The first is that of the Marvel superhero show that it is. In this regard, Miss Marvel provides a straightforward superhero origin story, with Kamala discovering her powers, learning to use them, having fun with them, and then battling her enemies with them. This part of the show is very well done, but also the least interesting and most traditional part. The second element is that of Kamala's teenage life, living in America as a Muslim teenager, having familial responsibilities and a close-knit family with religion and faith, traditions and cultural necessities ingrained into her very being. This is the most fascinating and often the most engaging part of Miss Marvel. The diversity and representation on display in Miss Marvel is fantastic. It's rare in Western media to see a Muslim of any size, age, shape or form to be presented as a good, decent person with a healthy background and family and no criminal association. In many Western created films and TV shows, Muslims are relegated to stereotypical terrorists and bad guys, not to be trusted, to be eyed with caution and to be looked down upon. It's therefore brilliant to see that Miss Marvel avoids this almost entirely by showcasing the living area, the relationships, the lifestyles and more of a standard American Muslim family. Anyone can be a superhero, and the messaging and themes surrounding this really set Miss Marvel apart from many other superhero based films and shows. As such, this elevates Miss Marvel as one of the most significant and important comic book superhero TV shows ever. Of course, Miss Marvel is a superhero TV show, and it falls into the age-old tropes and traditions of the genre in many ways and instances. It's in this regard where the show falters a bit and often fails to be as creative as it could have been. The first few episodes of Miss Marvel are incredibly fun and visually compelling, thanks to overlays and designs that help give the show a unique look and personality. It's a bit disappointing that this doesn't last though, with the final few episodes lacking a lot of this visual element. The amount of colour and art and style on display is impressive throughout the show, but in terms of plotting and themes and story, it can be very easily compared to a Spider-Man movie, where teenage characters are going through a physical transition, aging and maturing and developing superpowers. It's not the most original thing ever, but it's presented in a cool way. The biggest flaw of the show comes after these moments, when the show starts to provide an antagonist for Kamala to contend with. The villains of Miss Marvel are not good. Their motivations and goals are basic and lacking in elaboration and understanding. The villains want to return home, but to do so, they could kill many people and destroy their current home. The problem is that we are given little to help us understand why the villains are so desperate, why they are so longing for their homes, despite seemingly having spent a very long time on Earth and now also seemingly doing okay for themselves. The show fails to make their goal seem all that more desirable and understandable, and doesn't help matters when the characters themselves are bare basic and lacking in interesting moments, looks or scenes. Another villainous force is also presented throughout the show, that of Damage Control. In many regards, Damage Control is a stand-in for the police force and the American Secret Services. The very forces and groups that have helped enforce a prejudice against Muslim communities and people in Western culture and locals for many years now. So when we see Damage Control burst into mosques, claiming authority, wearing their shoes and showing little respect for the Muslim communities, these scenes and moments come across as far more villainous and targeted than one might first think, especially if you are unaware of the history and context of such instances. While the individuals at the front of Damage Control are one note, the overall presentation of them is spot on and does a good job at developing them as an antagonistic force for Kamala to contend with. Kamala herself is the real shining star of Miss Marvel. Kamala is portrayed by young actress Iman Vellani in what is her first on-screen performance, and it's incredible. Iman makes Kamala an endearing, charming, funny, quirky and highly likeable individual right from the first time we see her. It's hard to believe she's so inexperienced. Whether it's dealing with sometimes awkward family dynamics, or hanging around in school with friends, or jumping around as a superhero, Iman does a fantastic job at making Kamala one of the most well-rounded and realised superhero characters ever. One of the most nagging and contentious parts of the show are the powers used by Kamala Khan. In the comic books, Kamala Khan can stretch and grow parts of her body, making her fists enormous or her legs long, for example. These powers are the result of a process called Terrigenesis. In this TV show though, her powers are provided by a family heirloom, a bangle that grants her the power to create shields, to forge steps, and to stretch her arms and legs, albeit in a more flashy, colourful way in comparison to the comic books. It does a good job at making her powers more distinct, especially in comparison to another Marvel superhero with similar abilities. The problem is that her new powers are rarely presented in the cool or interesting ways, partly because of budget limitations. Additionally, the idea that anyone can be a superhero is also reduced in significance when Kamala becomes a superhero because she finds a device that gives her powers. It's a little frustrating that this is not the exact adaptation of the comic book character, even if it's somewhat understandable to make these changes to avoid comparison with others. But it's more frustrating when this new version isn't as cool or as interesting as the original comic book version. Ms. Marvel will go down as one of the most important and significant superhero TV shows ever made. It will also go down as a very good and fun TV show, but with a few flaws. Iman Vellani is fantastic in the lead role and will likely be seen as a role model moving forward, but the show does struggle with its antagonists who are not very well defined. The final few episodes struggle a bit as well in terms of pacing, and there are some story points which lack full development and explain.